You know, the title of my speech in the printed program said something about reflections from the field. And it was a placeholder title. And I didn't really think of something else when it came down to writing the speech, so I figured that was as good a title as any. And so I'm taking my inspiration from my placeholder title. And there are two reflections that I really want to offer. One is over the past 5 years, and the other has to do with our conference last June. Last Thursday night, the League, with its board donors and friends, celebrated the completion of its $25 million campaign for a new direction. And many of you in this room played an important role in helping us meet that significant milestone. On behalf of everyone at the League, I want to extend my deepest thanks to all of you and my deep gratitude. So thank you for all of that. And you know, the campaign was mounted to fuel the League's strategic plan, which was launched in 2007. And so the occasion of the completion of the campaign did give us a chance to look back and reflect a little bit. And I could recount for you what the League has done during this period: the many new programs, the research findings, many wins in Washington, technology upgrades, composer and conductor residencies and fellowships, etc., etc. But I won't. And here's the reason why. So a priest and a taxi cab driver from New York City die and go to heaven. And they get there and they see St. Peter. And St. Peter showed the priest his eternal dwelling place. And it was a shack. And then St. Peter showed the cab driver his eternal dwelling place. And it was a mansion. So the priest, as you would imagine, was just outraged. And he says to St. Peter, why does he get the mansion? And St. Peter says, well, when you preach, people sleep. But when people get into his cab, they pray. So this is not a story about priests and cab drivers, but the point is it's really the results that matter. And so if it's the results that matter, what can we say about the results of our work together over the last 5 years since our plan was launched? Well, first and perhaps most important, orchestras are no longer looking at their future through their rearview mirrors. And you have become keenly aware, we've all become keenly aware of the profound changes in the environment and the threats and the opportunities too. And as a result, with the League as the catalyst, convener, source of information, knowledge, occasional provocateur, we're becoming a community of learners and of innovators. When the Orchestra Leadership Academy was launched 10 years ago, its goal wasn't simply to provide all manner of professional development opportunity for every level and constituency in the field. Rather, the overarching goal was to increase the field's appetite for learning and to help orchestras to navigate change. Last year, of the 20,000 people from more than 600 orchestras that participated in our learning and leadership development activity, of those people, 95% reported that they applied that learning on their jobs. When our strategic plan introduced the idea of innovation, it was still greeted by some with suspicion. Today, it's the rare orchestra that is not in some way pursuing new practice to improve its delivery on mission. From the remarkable array of pricing experiments to the consortia that have been formed to create and deliver contextual programming, orchestras are innovating like never before. The League's 2007 vision statement reads, orchestras and their communities are vital to each other, and orchestras are essential to the evolution and vitality of music. In just the past 5 years, we've seen efforts to engage amateur musicians like the Rusty Musicians at the Baltimore Symphony, culturally specific work like South Dakota Symphony's collaboration with the Lakota Indians, and the spread of El Sistema-like programs to 13 orchestras, and the now almost commonplace association of orchestras with human service agencies. And as last year's Spring Free Music Festival revealed, orchestras from Albany to Oregon, they're still a great orchestra, are creating dazzling programs of exquisite quality. Took a little while. Are creating dazzling programs of exquisite quality that bridge the old and the new. We're not taking credit at the League for the abundance of creativity that orchestras are beginning to channel into their communities, or for the growing and deepening of the orchestral experience. But 5 years ago, we did deliver a message, and a message that was embraced. And we provided the tools to advance this new work, along with the networks that would move it through our field. As a field and at the League, we have a lot to celebrate. We've all come a very, very long way. And I want to extend my appreciation to all of you for the resilience that you've shown over this period. This has not been one of the easiest periods to be running a symphony orchestra. And I also want to express my very, very great thanks to the League staff, who has tried to be, and I think has been, as helpful as possible to all of you during this 5-year period. I'd love to ask them all to just stand up so we could acknowledge them. But we are far from ready to declare victory, as you would imagine. In recent years, issues have ripened, pressures of all kinds have mounted, and too many of our orchestras remain fragile. I'd like to recall last year's conference for a moment. Those of you who were there will remember that it was a time of unusual candor for us, a time when we said out loud to one another what our real circumstances are. This was a departure for us at the League, and a departure for us as a field. Thankfully, we didn't stop with a list of all the mountains we need to climb. We also laid out pathways and guidance for the ascent. Those included understanding and owning our true, current, and future financial circumstances, assuring continuity of board leadership, aligning with our communities, and fostering creativity. The result of our gathering in Minnesota was exhilaration. Many people reported to me a sense of catharsis. Everything that had been held back was now out. Others said they could now have the important conversations in the open instead of in the bar after the concert with a few confidants. Now, I'm a novice at conferences. I've only been to about 30 and produced 10. But even with so little to compare to, I think the June 2011 conference was the most exciting, stimulating, and energetic I've ever attended. And based on the conference survey results, I don't think I'm alone. So let's think back on that as a moment when we all turned the corner, facing into our future, by having the tough conversations with our critical stakeholders, taking responsibility for our near and long-term health, and above all, staying focused on that intersection of creativity and community, where our essentialness as orchestras creates public value, and our communities stimulate and enrich our artistry. Now, for the rest of this afternoon, we have a really good opportunity to kind of look at two things. One is to talk a little bit about the new challenge that we're facing, and the other is to introduce you to what we think will be an important new form of League help. And I wanted to take a minute to just talk about this new book by Robert Flanagan, The Perilous Life of Symphony Orchestras, Artistic Triumphs and Economic Challenges. And the publication of the book poses a potential public relations challenge, and it may be a source of controversy among musicians. It's also a great opportunity to consider how our business model works. And I think most of you hopefully received a message from me, I think last week, with some information about the book. And just to give you a little background, for those of you for whom this may be new, in 2007, Flanagan introduced a report that was commissioned by the Mellon Foundation. And that report is really the core of what the new book is. And Mellon commissioned the report in the context of its orchestra forum, and in particular a working group inside the forum called the Elephant Task Force. And Flanagan's charge from Mellon and the Elephant Task Force was to analyze whether or not orchestra finances were related and driven by structural issues in the orchestras or cyclical factors in the broader economy. That was his main mandate. And when the report came out, it caused a great deal of controversy for a variety of reasons and to a variety of constituents. I think many in the management community were equally dissatisfied with the findings, as were musicians. There was some very provocative information in the report suggesting that musician salaries had been increasing at a rate greater than comparable employees in other parts of our society. So that caused a big stir. There was also, Flanagan maintained that development expenditure was deriving a insufficient return on investment. And there was a lot of discussion among a small number of people, mostly inside the Mellon Forum, about all of this. And when Flanagan finally released it, the Stanford press release said, Stanford economist finds orchestra ticket sales do not cover expenses. And this did not further their cause of generating lots of publicity for the report. So it didn't really see too much traction in the press, in the media, or in our field for that matter. And in retrospect, or maybe to think of another way, it's now out as a published book. It's published by Yale University Press. It's being promoted very heavily for reviews, and they're promoting Flanagan to go out and talk about it. So we don't have an option to kind of cross our fingers and hope that no one will talk about it and that we won't have to respond to it. So we wanted to be sure that it was on your radar and that you were knowledgeable about it. And from my opinion, there are some very important lessons in it. I mean, first of all, it is work done by a credible social scientist who has looked at 17 years of orchestra data to confirm, in some cases, what we've already known, but now it's fact-based, and it has to do with what has been a declining financial state of the industry if you measure that by frequency of deficits and growth of the gap between earned income and contributed income. And he argues that orchestras will always be in this position because, citing Baumol and Bowen's book on the economics of the arts industry from the 1960s, that we are unable to use technology to achieve cost savings. Therefore, costs will continue to go up, and we'll need to raise more and more money and sell more and more tickets at higher and higher prices in order to cover those increasing costs. It's very much worth reading. You will find some of it to your displeasure, and you'll find some of it reinforcing what you already believe. But as a community, I think it's incumbent upon us to look seriously at any legitimate attempt to understand what we do. And so we sent you the email just to give you some of the brief highlights about the book, and also some FAQs if you need to talk about it. The FAQs just come from us. Obviously, we hope you read it and will formulate your own opinion, but you shouldn't be surprised if one day someone from your newspaper calls you up and says, is it true that orchestras are, operating in a precipitously dangerous way and you're about to go over the edge because Robert Flanagan said so? So with that in mind, please do take a look at that. I guess the last thing I would just say, my big takeaway really was his argument that it is really critical in decision-making around the financial health of orchestras to resist the incredible temptation to meet near-term pressure on your finances at the expense of your long-term viability. And I think that's an important message. You may not have to read 300 pages to get it, but I think that, for me, that's really what a lot of it comes down to.